It's time for Fort Worth Musical Moments. Join us now as Steve Markwardt takes a look at the music and the artists who made the city's vibrant musical legacy what it is today. Well, hey there. Welcome to here to Fort Worth Musical Moments. Brent Adams, along with our co-host Steve Markwardt, who's made his way to the world headquarters of the soon-to-be legendary Clarksville Creative Sound in Clarksville, Tennessee. And Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great, Brent. How about you?
I am doing great. I'm thankful it's Friday. It's been a week around here. I am ready for the weekend here, and it's going to be an exciting weekend.
It is going to be exciting. I know you've been burning the candle at both ends, got a lot of projects going on, but that's good. That keeps us out of trouble, right?
Absolutely.
We're glad to be here in Clarksville. Jill and I made the drive, and we've split it up. Stopped in Memphis, had an overdose of ribs, and then came on in yesterday and went right to work in the studio here. We've got, a whole handful of songs that we're going to be working on, bringing all the musicians in on Monday. And really looking forward to. Always love the creative process, watching Kurt Ryle work, because Kurt works the boards and the recording equipment. I just call it. It's just another instrument, as far as I'm concerned. The way he's like the maestro behind those boards. So that's why we say that's where the magic happens, because it truly is magic. The sound, the sound that we get out of this studio.
Well, and I have to say, I know we're not supposed to covet, but I saw the picture of those ribs.
Yeah, and Kurt took us last night to Mission Barbecue here in Clarksville, and Jill is a rib connoisseur, so Jill said, "Oh, I'm gonna have to try their ribs and compare," and they're, she said it's very, very close. So Mission here, if you're in Clarksville, Mission Barbecue is a great place, and they support our military folks too in a big way. In fact, the whole theme there at the restaurant is all about, patriotism and the good old men and women that keep our country safe.
And they have an award-winning label artist working there as well.
They do.
They happen to have Braden Ryle at the cash register, and I tried to get him to slip me some free food, but he would not do it. His integrity is intact. So
Rising star.
Rising star. CMA Texas Rising Star.
Yeah. Amazing young man.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to hear a little bit from him later, because we've got some music queued up from some of the up-and-coming artists from Clarksville Creative Sound that we're going to drop in here throughout the hour. But without further ado, we want to get to our special guest today, who's a partner in Clarksville Creative Sound, as well as a songwriter and a musician with quite a resume that we can't wait to hear all about. Hey, John Castleberry, welcome into Fort Worth Musical Moments.
Thank you, Brent. I really enjoy your show, and I love Fort Worth. It's great to be here.
And Steve, this is an exciting one here, because this is a guy that you have gotten to know and really taken your career to another level with this whole partnership with John and with Kurt Ryle, who's hiding around the corner as well.
Yeah, I don't know where Kurt is, but yes. So I met John and Kurt a little over a year ago. It's hard to believe that we've only known each other that long, and everything that's transpired since then. But it was one of those instant friendship things when we first met, and we had a long visit outside of a facility that Kurt was holding his songwriters workshop thing on with all the members of his record label at that time, and we started talking about the music business and sharing our backgrounds, and I thought, this would be a great thing to get involved in. And so I made the trip back up, and Kurt and John and I went on what I call a historic journey to the Smoky Mountains to write music. And it was then that John started telling me about his background, and I was blown away. And I thought, this has got to be a God thing, because here I am with two great musicians, a great producer, and a guy that has actually rubbed elbows, more than rubbed elbows, had a very personal relationship with some of my favorite all-time artists. So,
well, I tell you, before we get into those, John, take us back a bit. I'm always fascinated about this. Where does the love of music come from? Where were you first exposed to it, and what were some of your earliest recollections of music and the musicians that you were listening to?
I was in love with music from the time I was a little boy. My mom had one of those little record players for children. We used to have these little record players, and I used to drag it around and ask people to play records on it for me. When I got a little bit older, I'd heard about Alan Lomax, and I was in West Virginia with my grandmother. I stayed there for several years, and I collected records from local farmers and old instruments, and I was in love with music from the gate, from the time I was a very young boy, and I still am.
Do you remember some of the artists that really stood out to you?
Um, I guess the first, the things I listened to when I was a child, like Burl Ives, but later on it was Dylan. It was the rock music of the '60s and some of the '50s music. Yeah, Dylan was my hero um, as a young man. Like so many other people of my generation, we thought he was a prophet. And he was speaking to people with our voice, and it was it's hard for people to understand how powerful he was to my generation.
Isn't it funny that Dylan, in all the interviews that I've ever seen, and I'm a pretty substantial Dylan fan myself, but Dylan is the only one that would disagree with you about being the voice of a generation.
Yeah, he was an
You know,
entertainer.
he always shrugged off that whole moniker,
Yeah.
and I think it was just because the attention that he got was so overwhelming, from what I can gather, that and when he went through his first phase of emerging out of Greenwich Village, signing with Columbia Records. John Hammond discovered him, pulled him in there, and that was a major thing. Everybody's like, how the heck did he get that contract? And then he
It is amazing.
hooked up with Joan Baez. She took him to the Newport Folk Festival 3 years in a row, and in that period of time, you could see him changing, and then he became a
The electric
shooting
Dylan.
star, and then along about '66, he had that famous motorcycle wreck,
Yes.
and disappeared from sight. Everybody thought he was dead, but really, I think he was just, people were literally giving him nicknames or monikers like the Messiah.
Yes. Yeah, people had the illusion that he was a Messiah. Um, by the way, I was very interested in folk music. There was an anthology called the Folkways Anthology of American Folk Music, and Dylan was affected by that. He talks about it. I think it is, Steve mentioned it.
Yeah,
to
Woody
me.
Guthrie was a big
Woody was a big.
influence.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time in the hospital with Woody, and he. So I was always looking for the authentic. I was looking for something that seemed real, straight from the heart. Listen to everything, but folk music was.
You got to understand, when Dylan came along, the popular songs of the day. This was before the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Beatles were kicking around Hamburg and Liverpool and all that, but from what I understand, the popular music of the day. So prior to that, just prior to that, you had Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and those guys, Fats
Who I
Domino,
loved.
and the
Yeah.
mainstream had a hard time accepting them because, I guess, of the racism of the
Yeah.
days, and they tried to get Pat Boone to record Tutti
Yes.
Frutti.
Yes.
That didn't work out too.
Yeah.
And nothing against Pat Boone, great guy, but and then the next thing you know, Chuck Berry's going to prison for some trumped up charge.
Yes.
And
Girl Over the State Lines, I think.
and so then the establishment, so to speak, takes over the music business again, gets those guys out of there, and what's left is, how much is that doggy in the window?
Oh yeah,
So
I remember well.
Dylan said, well, that's what I was listening to as a teenager, and then I got a hold of what you're talking about,
American,
that Folkways anthology,
and it was like, whoa, what is this? It was so
telling stories,
yeah, great,
and social messages,
real different.
like Woody Guthrie was he was definitely a prophet in some of the songs. So yes,
did some great tunes.
Yeah.
So, John, tell me a bit about where you went from just listening to those songs to deciding you want to write those songs and learn how to play and kind of put all that together.
I started writing when I was about 14, I guess. Some of my first songs were written then. I was a professional musician and involved in music until I was about 30. And that's when I converted to Christianity and made some major life changes. Um, the But I spent a lot of time pursuing my career, talking, um, dealing with record labels, um, trying to get a contract, playing in clubs. You know, that was at when I at 30, I went to college and I actually became a psychotherapist. I'm still a licensed psychotherapist, although I haven't practiced for 2 years. I never turned in my license, but I did that. But I still stayed involved in the music business.
And
Kurt,
being
yeah,
a licensed psychotherapist, there's probably enough work right there in the music field that you don't even ever have to leave, right?
Right here in the
you
studio.
better believe it. Yeah,
Right in the studio, Brent.
Right.
it's a
So
business.
you mentioned trying to get a contract. What was that like back then? We know what it's like today. What was it like in those days trying to get noticed by labels?
It was, you know, most of the I had the good fortune of being able to. I met people who got me in to see important people in the music industry. Um, I had a problem with what they wanted me to record. I wanted to do something that was more what I considered more authentic and real. And so I did some headbutting, and then I would retreat. You know,
So when you say that, what were they trying to get you to do?
more of a
How much is that doggy in the window?
generic pop music. Yeah, they wanted me to do a more generic. They wanted hits, of course. I mean, that's when I went into a company and played for them and talked to them. They would say, "Yeah, okay, we need a hit, so we're going to need a song like XYZ or PDQ over here." And I'm thinking, I don't want to do that. I mean, there's already that already exists, you know, and I thought that I was capable of doing something that was powerful and unique, and that's all I was interested in.
Isn't that interesting though? Because we're seeing that same thing today,
Yeah.
and once somebody comes along and really shakes things up, and they get on a winning formula, and it's proven, it's all about the money.
Yeah.
Then we see it in Nashville. I'll just say it. Nashville beats that to death.
And
now, if you listen
Same
to
song.
a lot of the contemporary country stuff out there, the pop country we call it, or whatever you want to call it, it's I can listen to 5 or 6 songs and think, I can't tell those guys apart.
Can't tell them apart. It's boring. People want something that touches the heart.
And I'm not wholesale condemning.
Yeah.
There's some great stuff
Sure.
out there too, but there's a lot of that still. And I guess it's always been the nature of that business, right?
Yes, it has been. I think it's always been about making money. We went through a period when there was a little more flexibility. It seems in the mainstream of it's really cookie cutter.
We had on this show a few weeks ago Mark Nobles, who did a documentary film called Teen Go Go. And it was about the early 60s music scene in Fort Worth, and how when the Beatles came along, all these teenagers decided all these garage bands popped up. And and of course all these guys, here's a bunch of Texas boys, but they're walking around trying to speak with a British accent.
Yeah, and wearing British outfits.
Wearing the coats with the ruffles and all.
Yeah.
And some of those guys went on to national prominence.
Some of them did.
But that was the way it was, and the Beatles came along, and all of a sudden you had all these people like Freddie and the Dreamers and Herman's Hermits.
Fun.
Any other time, those guys, nobody would have given them a second look. But on the heels of the Beatles, if you had a British accent, the girls would scream, even if you had one eye in the middle of your forehead.
Absolutely. It's so true. When you look back at those 60s bands, so many of them were wearing British outfits and British haircuts and all that stuff. It was.
So another thing, just like, kind of beat it to death. But at that time, but there was some great stuff that came out of there too, obviously.
By the way, as a side note, a lot of those 60s bands, like, we can think of a dozen of them, but the Buckinghams and dozens of others really didn't make any cash. I talked to a lot of people from that era about how their careers went, and there really was no money in it for them. Their companies would
Well, that's kind of a
get them a
drag.
per diem. It was kind of a drag. But by the way, that song was worth a fortune in publishing. The guy that got the publishing on that tune was driving a Ferrari the last time I saw him.
Somebody made money.
Yeah, but a beautiful Ferrari. But they made money touring and this and that, but they were taken advantage of, no doubt.
Well, it's good to hear that it's changed and that everybody's making a lot of money now.
Yeah, we're all making so much money.
Yeah, the pennies are rolling in.
Yeah, that one with the Vicente.
I'm selling pencils.
Well, I tell you what, we want to delve a little deeper into John's musical journey here. But before we do, we talked about the great work they're doing with Clarksville Creative Sound here. And we've got queued up for today's show 4 young artists that are doing great work here with Clarksville Creative Sound. And I want to share the first, just this week, dropped a new single by Jaden Riley called Rewind. Guys, tell us about this one.
Oh, man.
Were you involved in writing
I was involved in writing it. Yeah, it's pop. The intention of when Kurt and I were working on it was to write something that was really poppy for Jaden, something that was kind of age appropriate. And I think it's a good little tune. I really enjoy it. And hey, there's a lot of things in my life I wish I could rewind. I bet we all share that.
Oh yeah, well, it's proof positive, Brent, that how versatile this studio is, especially Kurt Ryle. I mean, this week we're going to be doing some pretty darn traditional country and western swing stuff, but he can shift gears and do something like what you're about to show.
Yeah, Kurt can do anything from traditional jazz to blues to country to country swing.
He's an amazing musician. He's not completely averse to rap or hip hop either.
No, but heavy metal.
Heavy metal.
Well, I'd say we've got a very diverse group that we're going to share throughout the hour here, but we're going to start out with this one here. This is Rewind by Jaden Riley.
Just a shiny toy. Wish I hadn't kissed the boy. It was such a stupid move. Might have just cost me you. Rewind. I wanna go back in time and undo the living hell I put you through. I was born and now you're gone, all alone on my own with one thing on my mind. I was blind. Rewind. I don't understand my moods, all the crazy things I do. That kiss didn't mean a thing. Wish I had a time machine. Rewind. I wanna go back in time and undo the living hell I put you through. I was born and now you're gone, all alone on my own with one thing on my mind. I was blind. Rewind. Cause I need to tell you how much I love you. I didn't mean to be unkind. Rewind. I wanna go back in time and undo the living hell I put you through. I was born and now you're gone, all alone on my own with
Congratulations, Braden.
Some great stuff there from Jaden Riley. And we want to, before we move on here, want to give some shout outs here, because we got a lot of great friends who are watching today. See Alicia McLeod on here, friend JD on Cat on here, checking in from Canada, Dina Wood on here, Terry Lemaster, our friend Larry O'Neill. Larry, thank you. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Our friend Mary Minter on here, Jay Matthews. Going on here, I see my mom on here, so that's my fan club of one here. Glad to see her on here. But Jaden Riley, rewind, that'll get you going.
Good.
We have our mom on, Dina Wood. Dina Wood's our mom.
Yes.
I wanted to share something about the production on that. Kurt has, you can't hear it on the system, but on the system that most people are listening to, but Kurt records an analog. So there's a really broad spectrum sound that's coming out of this studio that's fantastic. And he's truly a maestro.
Yeah, the fidelity is amazing. Yeah. I've had a lot of people that know sound really well listen to my stuff, and they're really surprised at the richness that we get. And you can only do that because of the hybrid mix of analog and digital that Kurt has. Mm-hmm. It's just something that he has tweaked and worked on for years and years and years by building this studio, piece by piece.
Yes.
We're going to share more of that richness throughout the hour here, but I'm curious now. So, John, we talk about you starting to find your chops as a player and starting to kind of dabble in writing music. Where do you go from there in terms of how do you get yourself on the road, and how do you start intersecting with some of the legends in the music business?
Well, I met people who introduced me to Dylan, and I met people who introduced me to McCartney and other people. They were in the music industry in Los Angeles. I was friends with people that had some influence and were well connected, and I found out that there were needs at certain times that I could fulfill. So I had a lawyer who was an excellent person in the industry who was very helpful. Her name was Betsy McCluskey, and she was helpful. But once you meet people, they introduce you to other people.
All right.
But first of all, you find yourself a few years prior to that listening to these folks, being a fan of theirs.
Huge fan.
You talked about how Dylan was such a huge influence on you.
Huge influence.
And you go from that, and most of us, can say the same thing about whatever artist, that we really love, but most of us don't one day find ourselves having, a conversation with meeting these people. And so how do you keep it together and not just go,
Well, that's
that first moment.
The first moment, oh my goodness. The first moment that I met Bob Dylan, I thought, I thought he was very careful to be a human being with me. He asked me, he looked at my car, and he said, "Do you mind if I sit down in your car?" I said, "No." And I said, I hear you like motorcycles. He said, "Oh yeah, come over, look at my motorcycles," and we talked about different things that we enjoyed. And
where was this?
That was in Malibu.
That was his house?
Yeah. I went to Pepperdine University. I got my first bachelor's and master's there. Dylan had a huge estate.
Still does.
It still does. I mean, it's extraordinary in its size and affluence. So I was probably living, I don't know. I was living in Malibu at the time. I was probably living less than a mile away from his home. So it was really easy for me to connect with him. He was around the block walking his dogs. His English bull mastiffs, they weigh about 100 pounds apiece,
But you told me, John, when you and I, because I drilled you pretty hard on Dylan, and you told me that the thing about Dylan, if you ever get a chance to meet him, is talk to him like he's just another guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't go gushy, because that's what really makes him uncomfortable.
It made him very
you also
uncomfortable.
told me, and maybe you can elaborate on this, that he asked you, he gave you the distinct impression that he was really interested and wanted to know about you.
He did, which was really extraordinary. I've seen that with several people who call them powerful. He was interested in getting to know me. He was interested in talking on a human level, not. I think that position of fawning and idolatry, or whatever you want to call it, that they get a lot of times, is really lonely. Dylan had an individual persona. He was like Steve or like Kurt, he had an individual identity, and then he also had a Bob Dylan identity. The Bob Dylan identity could be really pretty sharp, pretty rough, and he didn't put up with a lot of nonsense, and he did some, he wasn't always easy to deal with. I know people that refuse to work with him anymore in the studio because of his tantrums and things. But Bob Dylan tantrum.
I was wondering about that with some of the players, and I was kind of wondering that when we had Chuck Cusimano on there last week and talking about some of the folks that he's worked with, when you get to people who are at that level, they are very demanding. And how do you accommodate that as a player and kind of find your lane and make sure you stay there?
Well, he is very demanding. He was, but in my case, in my relationship with him, for whatever reason, I never had a harsh word from him. He was very kind, I guess, and I whatever needed to happen in the relationship was happening. I got to meet his children, spend time with his kids, and do a lot of things that were very human. But Dylan scared a lot of people that worked for him. They were always very cautious. A lot of them were cautious. They were always second guessing him about what he did. I was telling Steve, he bought a bunch of old cars and he put them on his property, and people talked to me about it. They asked me, why do you think he's doing that? They thought he was doing sculpture or something with the cars. The position of the cars was meaningful. And I talked to him about it. He said, I'm just using it for scrap. He said, I'm doing some sculpture, and but they were afraid to ask him for some reason. Interesting, huh?
Yeah. And you said he's had a really good sense of humor too.
He had a wonderful sense of humor. Yeah, he does. He's so brilliant. One time he was walking his dogs and one of the neighbors complained, and Dylan said, they're not my dogs. And he's got these enormous mastiffs. By the way, a little insight about Dylan too. This is strange for me. He's got these incredible dogs. They used to call them the dogs of war. They would put them in spikes and things and run them out in front of the troops.
In the ancient days.
The dogs of war. And he had one particular one that would terrify people. His name was Brutus. Brutus would run up at people full on and open his mouth and act like he was going to grab them. And he would take a lemon off a lemon tree, put that thing in his mouth, and just sit there and eat it in front of you. Anyway, but he was a sweet dog. He really was. I really liked Brutus. But one day, Dylan changed the names of all his dogs. He did. He did, and everybody's going crazy, right? Everybody at the place is going nuts. Why did Dylan change the name of his dog?
Dylan.
Yeah, and
that's when you decided to become a psychotherapist, identity crisis stuff.
I asked him, and he said, "Well, they do it in the Bible, I mean, Peter got called Rock.
Saul was
so I'm
Paul.
Just changing everybody's name."
So you talk about his brilliance, and we hear all about the genius in the songwriting. Tell us a bit about how you saw that actually working with him, kind of that genius in motion.
I'll tell you something that I believe firmly, and this is something I actually kind of settled with Kurt. We talked about, some of the people that Kurt had worked with in the past, brilliant, talented, gifted musicians. I think the conclusion that I came to about Dylan was, and a lot of other people in the industry who are particularly talented, like Paul McCartney, they are gifted. I mean, and I know that sounds strange, but it's as if most people get a quarter of a cup, they got 3 in terms of the gifts, and that doesn't mean a lot in terms of in a lot of things. It doesn't mean they're good people. It doesn't mean they're the smartest people in the world. It doesn't mean what it means is they're gifted. Well, I think Dylan was mega gifted.
And there's a lot to. I think I theorize, and I think there's a lot of truth to this, that we're all born with special attributes and gifts, and we're all born with extraordinary gifts. Our job while we're on this earth is to find out what that is and do it
and use it.
And some people go their whole life denying that or never even discovering that they have that within them. But those that do, and really hone in on it, like those guys, that gift blossoms and grows
on
and next thing you know, they're doing amazing things. I mean, obviously Kurt Riles was born to write, perform and record, and produce music.
Produce and write. Truly, Kurt, in my opinion, is in the same category as say Paul McCartney. He's a multi-instrumentalist. His production is amazing. His writing is amazing. And
Kurt's sitting over here with his feet in cement right now.
And he blesses people by giving a lot back. He, with the Songwriters Workshop, that's, I think that's one of the signs of true greatness in a man, and certainly in a musician. And anyway, I don't know if I answered your question. I probably didn't.
No, I believe you did here. And you mentioned Paul McCartney a couple of times. We're going to talk about him here in a little bit. But as we move on, you talk about Kurt Ryle, his young charge. Mr. Braden Ryle has got a new song out. He's an up-and-coming artist. We're going to play Deep, Deep South. Tell us a bit about this one.
My goodness. That you'll have to talk about Deep, Deep South, Kurt. No, all I can say is it's a rockin' tune. It is a rockin' tune, and it's country, and it's good.
And Braden wanted a tune like this, and you guys served him up, didn't you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we talk about the diversity. We heard a little bit of pop music from Jaden Riley earlier. This one is more of the new country variety here, and we're going to let you hear this one. It's a great anthem here for the spring and summer months. This is Deep, Deep South.
It's a hot day in the deep, deep south. Clothes are coming off, the skin's coming out. 10 hot bodies, yeah, there ain't no doubt. Another hot day in the deep, deep south. We got a band on the bars, loudspeakers, and a country sound. People jumping from boats, landing on their floats. It's about to go down. Girls standing off mats, couldn't get any hotter. There's a hell of a party going on in this water. It's gonna be a hot day in the deep, deep south. Clothes are coming off, the skin's coming out. 10 hot bodies, yeah, there ain't no doubt. Another hot day in the deep, deep south. There's bodies on the lake just as far as the eye can see. I've got a bird's eye view of heaven right in front of me, yeah. From where I stand it couldn't get any better, and it don't cool down when the girls get wetter. It's gonna be a hot day in the deep, deep south. Clothes are coming off, the skin's coming out. 10 hot bodies, yeah, there ain't no doubt. Another hot day in the deep, deep South. Come on, girl, if you want me to sing, you better show me something. Flash that smile and I'll stand here and sing all night for nothing. It's gonna be a hot day in the deep, deep South. Clothes are coming off, the skin's coming out. Tan hot bodies, yeah, there ain't no doubt. Another hot day in the deep, deep South. Hot day in the deep, deep South. Clothes are coming off, the skin's coming out. Tan hot bodies, yeah, there ain't no doubt. Another hot day in the deep, deep South. Another hot day in the deep, deep South.
Ah, well, that'll get you jumping.
Yeah.
Nothing like, yeah, it's a hot song. Kurt, come in here for a second and talk a little bit about this song.
Yeah, great tune.
Well, and as he's doing that, I'll tell you, Dina Wood, our friend with Indie Express, who distributes a lot of this music to DJs worldwide, says that this song has been highly popular with worldwide radio. So that's exciting to hear.
Hey, that's great news.
You know, this song was written, I wrote this with a boy named Kelsey Hart.
Oh, yeah.
And we took Kelsey to Big Machine Records, they were very interested in signing Kelsey. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he ended up going to Curb instead. And when he did, this song came open, and Braden just said, hey, I want to record it. If Kelsey's not going to release it, I want to release it. And I wrote I wrote a whole album with Kelsey. And I think Braden's going to just end up covering every one of those songs because Kelsey never released them. So they're brand new. They've never been heard before.
Braden knocked it out of the park, I tell you.
Yes, you did.
Nothing like a 16-year-old boy with a red Corvette.
Yeah, can you believe that?
I was driving a baby blue. Jay Matthews, if he's still watching, can confirm this. I was driving a baby blue four-door Ford Granada.
Oh, man.
I could top that, Steve. I had a 1959 Buick as long as my studio. And in order to start,
that thing would be worth a lot of money today.
Oh man, it was a tank. You had to push the gas pedal all the way to the floor just to get it to start. And, it was crazy. But yeah, that song. And also, I talked to Jaden Riley this morning, and she's very excited about this new single that you played Brent a while ago of hers.
Rewind. She's
getting a lot of airplay too, and so yeah, these kids are doing very well.
Yeah, Jaden's a huge YouTube star, millions and millions of followers.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that Jaden Riley is also an actress. She was in a movie with Sean Penn just recently called Flag Day, and she had a leading role in that movie. And so these kids have a bright future ahead of them. And Brent, we appreciate you playing their stuff.
Sure,
man.
do.
It's really important.
So much.
Well, we've got two more kids queued up here a little bit later on here, and we're gonna roll on with those. So, John, we've mentioned Paul McCartney a couple times. Tell us a bit about how that matchup came to be, and fill us in a little bit on some of the similarities and some of the differences between working with Bob Dylan and working with Paul McCartney.
McCartney was living temporarily in Bel Air, which is near Beverly Hills, California. He was renting a home was rented for him, a beautiful home up there. And
what period time?
This was it was the Venus and Mars album during that period.
I'm not sure. I'll look that up.
But I had heard that from a friend of mine that he needed somebody to work for him, and I was connected with him that way. The first time I went in to see him, Linda came. His wife at the time, Linda McCartney, came to the door and invited me in. Sweet lady. She was wearing a bikini that didn't match, and she said, pardon the way I look. I have stretch marks and I borrowed a bikini from a girlfriend, and and it doesn't match. And my first impression was, why in the world does she care?
By the way, Venus and Mars is Paul McCartney's fourth album after the breakup of the Beatles that came out in 1975.
75.
Yeah.
Anyway, but she was just sweet as she could be. Introduced me to Paul, who was hanging out by the pool, probably more than a little bit stoned. He smoked a lot of weed. He was able to talk to him. He actually played a little bit on a piano that he had, a portable piano that he had in his, when he went inside, got to meet the kids, which was super cool. The kids were, they had a very sweet relationship with their children. The children obviously loved them and felt secure. They had given them, they had turtles in their bathtub and a little plant collections. And Linda had a songbook. It was a guitar book actually, and she was learning how to play. It was like a beginner's guitar book that she was working on, and I thought that is just so. It just seems so strange, but nice. You know, really nice.
Linda McCartney came from a lot of money. She was part of the Eastman Kodak family. Linda Eastman
couldn't have been sweeter.
Yeah.
Just as sweet as she could be.
And then and those kids that you met of McCartney, some of them went on to achieve fame on their own, like Stella McCartney, very, very successful designer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that, I guess normal, I felt like it was kind of a normal, loving family. And I always felt that way about him, that he was an incredibly gifted and talented man, but genuine and just a genuine person.
Did you tell me that his kids would come on tour with him quite a bit?
Yes. Linda and the kids would go on tour, and I guess that helped with the loneliness. And
so did you find yourself babysitting sometime?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. Which was fine with me, because I haven't had the blessing of having children myself, and I enjoy. I really feel privileged to enjoy other people's kids. When there's a chance, it gives me a little bit of granddad.
You're kind of like the male equivalent of Andy Mame. I know you come waltzing in here bearing gifts for Braden a lot. So
yeah, Braden's been a joy. He really has. He's a good kid.
Right. Rock solid. So you roll up on Paul McCartney. How do you break the ice with him, and where do you guys begin that conversation about music?
Well, Linda, his wife introduced me. Frankly, we didn't talk a whole lot about music initially. We just kind of talked about the house and what a nice day it was, and a little bit of this and that. How he's doing on the album. Just kind of general stuff initially. It was kind of like visiting friends. It felt kind of like visiting somebody who was going to be a friend.
But at some point, then there had to be a conversation about you joining him.
Right, and that was and that was pre-arranged, pre-agreed upon.
I see. So that was already done.
That was already done, so we could get a little bit more into the social end.
Okay.
All right. So what was it like plugging in with him the first time?
Oh my goodness. Just he's amazing. He doesn't have he's like Kurt, he has it's like he's plugged into the universe, as a musician, and his ideas were constant. They were very rich and original, and he got the best out of everybody he worked with.
Let me ask you this, because as a performer, there's nothing better. I anyway cannot wait to and don't do near enough live performing. And the reason I love it is because, especially when you're on and you've got, the band that I've got now, that band is hotter than anything I've
you got a great band.
And so when you're on and you're cooking and you feel the thing that gets addictive almost is the energy.
The audience. It's real, isn't it?
So I can only imagine the energy that you would feel on stage with a guy like Paul McCartney, who, of course, everybody, no matter how much Paul did or does on his own as a solo artist, he'll always be connected with the Beatles, and of course he relishes that. But so I can only imagine the energy that you were feeling.
The energy is it's like a wave. It's like if you've ever surfed a bit in high surf in the ocean. It's like a powerful wave. It's tangible. That kind of energy coming from the audience.
Yeah, and I'm sure it never gets old to somebody like Paul McCartney, and he soaks it up, right?
It may be the ultimate addictive substance.
Could be.
Could be.
It could be. That's why even Dylan, and
they keep performing.
He doesn't have much of a voice left, but he's out there performing almost every night somewhere. Never ending Rolling Thunder tour, I guess is what you call it.
I asked him one time why he continued to play. I thought, man, by this point you got so much money, you don't need any more money. And he said, well, somebody's got to pay for this stuff. But I think the truth is, was that he really loves it, and that's what he does. I mean, I think that's why Steve's in the studio, why Kurt's in the studio. There's an energy here, like the audience energy that vitalizes.
Well, the whole time when I'm in the studio, Kurt can probably concur with this, but when you're making music in the studio, the whole time in the back of my mind, I'm hopefully excited about how the public's going to receive this music, and that's constantly pushing you to put out the best thing that you can. Not because it's certainly not so I can go home and listen to myself. I'm the most critical person. I don't need critics. I'm hypercritical.
In your own head, you've got critics.
Yeah. But it's all about hopefully being excited to get this stuff out to the public. And sometimes you underestimate or overestimate the effect it'll have on the public, or sometimes you think this song everybody's going to love and it kind of falls flat in the public eye, but the song that you weren't quite as excited about, everybody you never know.
You never know.
So but it's a constant thing, and it is addictive.
It is addictive.
There are worse things to be addicted to.
You got that right. I've been addicted to some of those things. But Steve, another thing that's happening, I think, with the swing stuff is keeping that music alive and keeping it vital. And it's this music is it's part of who we are. It's part of the fabric of our being and our country and our communities. And I'm really grateful that people are writing it and performing it. And Steve's a big part of that.
Well, yeah, and of course the music that we're doing, that we've been doing, the validation you get is not so much from the applause; it's from people out on the dance floor.
Yeah,
but you can still feel the love.
Yeah,
and the energy.
Well, we were, in talking about Paul McCartney. I was kind of riveted, I guess about a year ago when the Get Back documentary came out, and there was just all those hours of footage of those guys in the studio and creating. And what we saw was that Paul liked to have things his way. He was very creative. He was all over the place, constantly being inventive. Did you see that side of him?
Absolutely. He was definitely in control of always in control, but not in a dictatorial or tyrannical way. He had a good relationship with the people he worked with, but he was kind of like a lightning rod for ideas, and people respected that, and they wanted to benefit from his ideas and try to give him what he was experiencing. So yeah, he was definitely the leader. I think he was the leader of the Beatles, really. Don't you?
Yeah, of course, John Lennon, if he were here, might
definitely disagree.
And there was a little bit of that going on. You hear all these stories. Who knows what's really true? I just, I know when all the dust settles, when you hear Paul McCartney, all he says is, "I love John."
Yeah,
he was my brother.
He's a real gentleman, isn't he?
And same with those other guys. There were 4 Beatles. And of course, a lot of people hone in on McCartney and Lennon because they were, probably the most successful songwriting team ever. But there were 2 other Beatles, that were the Beatles would not have been anywhere near the Beatles if it hadn't been for George
George.
Harrison and what he contributed. And then the most underestimated of all was Ringo and his drumming. My gosh, if you really study, and there's YouTube videos you can look in the genius of Ringo Starr, and the things that he did to make those songs, stand out.
I had a producer one time say, the difference between a hit, you could, this was LA. He said that, I could record something 40 times and one of them would work. Everything was perfect in this particular tune. And talking about old recording, older times, but those little things are priceless. Those little additions to the,
and those guys
make it happen.
Before, when they had Pete Best, but they watched Ringo and they coveted him, and when they were kicking around Liverpool and Hamburg and all that, and Ringo was a very sought after jazz drummer.
Oh, I didn't know
he had
that.
a jazz background initially. And so when they had the chance to bring Ringo in, they snapped him up. And of course, the most tragic figure in music history has to be Pete Best.
Oh my goodness! I think he got a cut from the Beatles, which must have been a huge thing. By the way, there's some wonderful songwriting stuff in that documentary. One of them I think is with George, and he's writing something, and he's struggling with trying to come up with something in the way she moves, and that he's doing his mayonnaise or whatever. He can't think of a line, and they're kind of bouncing some stuff back and forth. That's a real interesting insight into.
Well, the song "Yesterday's" working title was "Scrambled Eggs."
Scrambled eggs, yeah. I think he heard that in a dream or something.
I think so.
Yeah, he woke up and
might have something to do with the little indulgence in substances. Who knows?
Could be. There were a lot of substances, that's for sure.
Well, we talked a lot about Bob Dylan and Paul McCartney, but there were plenty of others that you ran into along the way as well.
Yes, I ran into Charles Manson at a club in. I
wasn't expecting that one.
Oh yeah, I did, but
Paul McCartney, Bob Dylan, Charles Manson.
I probably shouldn't mention Charles Manson. I was, I spent some time with Joni Mitchell and several other artists there. I was living in the area where that was all happening. It was so rich.
Kind of that canyon,
yeah,
Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, it was that. It was
birds
that scene.
And all those guys.
Everybody was there. I mean, you would go out to a club and 5 people that you are hearing records of were sitting around listening to the same music that you were. So it was like a vital live wire. Incredible place to be, an incredible time to be, and
you had the Beach Boys hovering around there too. Brian Wilson, Dennis Wilson.
How brilliant!
Well, Dennis Wilson was
brilliant.
Living there in Laurel Canyon, and he's the one that became enamored with Charles Manson and recorded.
It was his girls.
Yeah,
yeah. He anyway, yeah. They did a Manson song, but Manson had moved some of his girls into Dennis's house or one of the Beach Boys houses, and they completely ruined everything in his house and ripped off his car and did a lot of stuff. And they ended up recording one of his songs, but they did a good job on it. It's not a great song.
So what was your encounter with Charles Manson like?
Well, there was a club in Hermosa Beach, California. I heard from a friend of mine that the manager of the club was there. And I didn't have a guitar with me or anything. I didn't have any kind of tape or whatever. But I went in because I thought I might have a chance of meeting him and, making maybe playing there. So I went into the club and Charles Manson was there. I didn't know it was Manson at the time. I found out pretty quickly. The manager was there. I assume the manager met him in prison because he said he had hit a police officer and done some heavy time, and Manson was there and they were talking, and he and I said, I'm here, I'd like to audition for can I bring you a tape by later or whatever? And he said, no, play now, just play now. It's an empty club, there's a stage. He said, Charlie, let him use your guitar. And the guy was like a little rat.
Manson was?
Yeah, he was just, he was angry and you're not going to play my guitar, and I'm like, okay. So, I waited a little while and they talked and whatever. And then he offered me the opportunity to go back to his van and meet some girls that were with him. And I did. There were 3 young women. They played some of Manson's horrible music. And I told them I didn't like it. It was really terrible. And they invited me to the ranch. Now, the Spahn Movie Ranch is the place where the Manson family lived. Again, is not that far from the Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach area. So, and Manson was in and out of parties and all sorts of stuff. That all the walls were down.
At that time, Manson wasn't famous. He was just a barnacle around music, wasn't he?
With a bunch of girls that he could use. And he used them as kind of prostitutes.
That Spahn Ranch was featured, or at least a facsimile of it was featured in Tarantino's latest movie.
Yeah, I'd like to see
Once
that.
Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I haven't seen it. I hear
Fascinating
it's great.
movie, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. The girls invited me to the ranch. I didn't go. I got a bad feeling from the girls. They were really edgy, and I didn't like the edge. Didn't want to go with them. That was my experience with Manson.
It wasn't too long after that, then all that
hell broke loose.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But Charlie Manson.
But anyway, that's a little side thing. And
I didn't have a segue prepared for that one.
yeah.
But so the Laurel Canyon thing, there's a great documentary too out there called Echo in the Canyon.
I saw it.
Produced by Jacob Dylan, Bob's son.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Jacob.
Bob's son, and at one point Jacob's interviewing, I think, David Crosby.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, and David's talking about how he came to hang out in that area, and he was hearing things, and it was drawing all these musicians and artists in.
Yeah.
And so Crosby said, and then Dylan came. And Jacob said, "Oh no, who was it?" Said which Dylan? And of course, Crosby said, "Well, there's only one Dylan."
I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great documentary. Echo in the Canyon.
Yeah, I saw it. I loved it. Jacob.
You knew him as a little boy.
Yeah, as a little boy, and later on in his life too. Through his band thing, there was something about. Anyway, it was a fascinating time, and
but
David Crosby.
Yeah,
I spent some time with Crosby too, more than once. But talk about a man with edge. Crosby had major edge. He was he could be extremely cynical and extremely edgy.
Yeah,
edgy dude.
There's a great story, real quick, about Dylan in his Chronicles book, where he talks about going to getting a call from Princeton to get an honorary degree. He goes, I never set foot in college. Well, he goes, I went to college in Minnesota, but I didn't go to class. Didn't see any need.
Like he needed to.
And he goes, but he said, all of a sudden Princeton calls and wants to give me an honorary degree, and I'm thinking, well, I could use that for leverage somewhere. So he goes, so I didn't want to go by myself, so I called David Crosby. So he hops in, and we drive down to Princeton in my Eldorado convertible and pull up there, and I'm on stage accepting this degree, all this pomp and circumstance, and I hear Crosby out there going, "Go, Bobby!" Yelling, and he said he said I got my degree, got down, and Crosby said, "Let's get the heck out of here!" I can't wait to leave this place. Anyway, it's just crazy story.
He was he was tremendously cocaine addicted.
Yeah,
and that does tend to rock your boat a little bit. So.
On that note, I want to dive into another one here that Clarksville Creative Sound is working on here. I want to circle back around. I wanted you guys to, this has been a busy week for Clarksville Creative Sound, or in other words, just another week for Clarksville Creative Sound. Another release that came out this week, Jack of All Trades by Jasmine McDonald. Tell us about this one.
My goodness, this is another Kurt Ryle.
Well, actually,
input.
This is a song that Jasmine wrote.
Jasmine wrote
right?
it, yeah. Is it all Jasmine? Okay, this is 100% Jasmine.
I happened to be here in the studio when Jasmine showed up with her grandparents, Donna and Charlie, and she, in her kind of quiet way, told Kurt, because Kurt said, "Honey, what do you want to do?" what music you want to do? She goes, well, I've got a few songs I wrote. And Kurt's
Good
like, oh,
songs.
Kurt kind of looked, oh, really? I don't think we knew she was a songwriter. And she had written these songs and had a little multi-track recorder thing, home studio thing. And she came in and played a little percussion and, layered these things with vocals and harmonies and everything, and played us these rough cuts of these songs. And
They were good.
and Kurt was just like, wow, honey, you've been holding back. What the heck? And they came in here and and we were blown away by, once Kurt got done with it, of course, and helping her shape these songs, man.
Yes.
The outcome was amazing.
It was amazing, and it's one of the blessings of young artists working with older, more mature writers. Jasmine's worked with Kurt and seen Kurt work for years, and this is kind of an outgrowth of that experience.
But one thing I want to say real quickly, and I don't think Jasmine would mind me saying this, or Donna hopefully wouldn't, but you got to understand that Jasmine, has grown up kind of in a sheltered atmosphere. I mean, she grew up homeschooled by her grandmother. So she didn't have the public school experience so much. Not that she didn't have friends, but that whole universe, it's a whole different deal. And so she hasn't had a whole lot of life experiences up till to now. And she's 18 now. But the song and the content of the song would lead you to believe that she's a woman of the world.
Yes, yeah.
So that's what Kurt and I were blown away. Kurt's like, can you believe she's writing this stuff? And that's
Crazy.
So that tells you there's a real gift there.
Yes, indeed.
Well, we're going to let you hear it all for yourself here. This is Jasmine McDonald.
Thanks for playing, Brent.
Win me back, you need the luck of the draw, but you ain't winning nothing at all. 'Cause I know how to play my cards right. I'm calling no dice. You played one too many girls, and now I'm leaving your world. What a shame. This is your last game. All the other girls you couldn't keep, the chips are down and now you're beat. Nothing else left in your bankroll. It's as empty as your soul. Roll me like a dice for the last time, and now I'm done. You're a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy.
And that is a follow-up to her single Autumn Moon, which if you haven't heard that one, go back and YouTube or Spotify that song, Autumn Moon. That's another one that'll blow you away.
I'm sure it'll be playing regularly on the Rural Strong rotation, right?
Not that it will be, it already is. So make sure you go check that out. Rural Strong Radio, our 24/7 streaming radio station, found at ruralstrongmedia.com or on the Live 365 streaming radio app. You'll hear Jasmine McDonald on there. You hear some Braden Ryle. You get some Kurt Ryle. We run the gamut here. A lot of Steve Markwardt on there as well. The radio loves Steve Markwardt as well.
Well, I have a good face for radio.
That makes two of us, but we make it work here. And John, we talked a bit about the past and what you've done in the past. Tell us about this phase of life now. What this season looks like for you, and what are some of the things that you're working on these days, or things you want to work on?
Well, I've been working on mainly writing with Kurt, and so that's what I'm doing. That's my main, I guess you'd say, occupation. I'm no longer practicing as a psychotherapist. Haven't for about 2 years now, and I'm spending more time with other people doing different types of projects. I do some pro bono work, but music is still the thing that I love most of all. And I guess if I had one wish for the end of my life, it would be to complete a couple of projects that really move people's hearts. I love this country. Certainly, I love this company, and I love the people involved. And I feel like we can have an impact. I think you're having an impact with your radio show. We need to be. We need to give people examples of love for our country, love for each other, family. And I'd like to be a part of that. And if I can be a part of that musically, fantastic.
One of the things that really attracted us to Brent, learning more about what Brent and Rural Strong was all about, is Brent is now a board member of the NAFB, National Association of Farm Broadcasters.
Fantastic.
And if you look at their demographic, it's salt of the earth farmers, the guys that are putting food on our table, out there working the fields, plowing the field, And so we thought, this is the perfect demographic. This is what we want to reach.
Yeah.
And so it was a match made in heaven to join forces with Brent on that and his rural strong thing. And so what we're building here, I think, is right on par with what you're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
And you and I and Kurt had that same vision, a year or so ago, when we were in the Smoky Mountains. I remember sitting in that restaurant, and kind of the genesis of what we're doing now was developed over that conversation about, the main thing is just whatever we can do to get our music out to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. And encourage people that, this, our music is part of our identity. It's part of who we are. It's part of who we are as individuals and as a nation. It binds us together. And that's, we need binding together.
Well, and I think it's important, we believe we're making music that people want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes the mainstream, the big record companies, the conglomerates that own the radio stations, so to speak, the difference between us and them is they're putting music out there that they want you to hear. We're putting music out there that they want to hear, that we know they want to hear. And so I think that's why this thing is growing as rapidly as it is, and as we find more and more channels like the Pierce Media Group and people like that to get our music out there, it's just going to continue to blossom.
I believe so. I'm excited.
We stay true to ourselves and we'll be okay.
Absolutely.
Well, John, there's another young artist that I want to close things out today talking about here. This is a song that you had a hand in writing called Oklahoma's Calling Me, and the young artist, pretty good one.
Yeah, yes.
Before we do this song, I want to present something to John real quick. Just a little gift from us to him for doing this show. John and I have had numerous conversations about Bob Dylan and of course Bob Dylan's done these shows like the Theme Time Radio, where he could teach a college class in songwriting and and interpreting songs. And so this is a book that he came out with just recently called The Philosophy of Modern Song. And this is not about Bob's own music. He doesn't have any of his songs in here. It's all about other people, anybody from Perry Como to Chuck Berry and he just, he names probably 50 of the most important songs, at least in the moment he was thinking of this book, and he breaks them down in only the way Bob Dylan can. It's a very entertaining book.
Thank you so much, Steve.
And I think it's right along the lines with a lot of conversations you and I have had. So here.
Thank you so much. This is really a treasure for me. I look forward to reading it. I can't think of anything I'd rather read about Dylan or from Dylan than this information. I'd like to give you a gift. This is one of Bob Dylan's harmonicas. It's this is a Marine band, which is one of the main instruments he's played for his whole career. And this has been played by Mr. Dylan,
really,
Mr. Bob himself.
Wow. So if you think I can get some DNA off of this?
You could even get some DNA. It might change your life.
So there.
And if you want to,
Wait a minute. There it is.
Little Dylan DNA.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I'm speechless. But thank you very much.
Certainly.
It's amazing. What an amazing gift. He
plays about 6 different types of harmonicas and probably takes 20 to 30.
So how did you get that? Did he just hand it to you?
He asked me if there was anything I wanted when I left, when I stopped working for him. And I said, I would like some of your harmonicas or a harmonica. He gave me 10. This is I have left one for myself. This is one of the last ones. He gave me some things that he had written, some of his personal.
Are you sure Charles Manson didn't play?
No, no, that old rat. He didn't play that harmonica. Anyway, and he gave me several things. It was a very thoughtful, very sweet, and much appreciated. I really didn't want a lot from him, and anyway.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure.
That's good stuff there. I like that. I like that.
Good.
Well, tell us about this song here, Oklahoma's Calling Me.
My goodness. Now this is a trio. We wrote this. This is
in
Steve,
the Smoky Mountains. Yeah.
Steve in Oklahoma was calling him, calling Kurt, and calling me, and we just had to get that into words and music.
Well, we had just we had talked about my brother's documentary film,
yes,
Birth and History of Western Swing.
Fantastic film.
And we'd watched. I had a rough cut of that Mike had sent me, and I shared it with Kurt and John up in the Smoky Mountains, and we talked a lot about, even though Western swing music was born in Fort Worth, Texas, where Bob Wills really gained fame was when he left Fort Worth, tried to get some other gigs at other radio stations, but Pappy O'Daniel, the guy that was sponsoring him in the very beginning with Light Crust Doughboys, was so jealous of Bob that everywhere he went in Texas, he would buy out all their advertising and say, don't play Bob Wills. And so he finally had to go to Oklahoma to get a job. And he went to KVOO radio station. And they had like a 50,000 watt transmitter. And they believed him in him enough and would not take Pappy O'Daniel's money. So that became his home base, not only that radio station, but Kane's Ballroom. So you can really say that Tulsa, Oklahoma is what really launched him to the world. And of course, before you knew it, you had, he was going to Hollywood, making movies and attracting all these Hollywood and these West Coast players too. So we talked about Oklahoma not getting enough credit. So next thing you know, Kurt's over there banging away on an idea about a song about Oklahoma. And this is, now this song is a love song, but it's all about Oklahoma. And I've got one other, at least one friend of mine I know who's got a band, Robert Houston, who's got Western Swing Rules. And this song is in their playlist.
Fantastic.
So imitation is always the best form of flattery.
Yes, indeed.
So the song won Song of the Year with CMA of Texas for 2023. Great validation for us on that. So thank you, Mary Mentor and CMA of Texas. So we're real proud of this song.
Well, I tell you what, I think it is the epitome of the Western swing sound that's coming out of Clarksville Creative Sound. We want to share this one with you now. This is Oklahoma's Calling Me, our friend Steve Markwardt.
Thanks, Brent.
Texas, and I played a lot in Tennessee. They loved my songs in California, but Oklahoma's calling me. I met an angel from Montgomery, but I knew her love could never be. My Cherokee maiden waits in Tulsa. Yeah, Oklahoma's calling me. All roads take me back to Tulsa. Half of my heart waits there for me. My shoes keep walking back to you, dear. Oklahoma's calling me. Twin fiddles playing, it floods my mind with memories of you as you whispered that you loved me. Oklahoma's calling me. All roads take me back to Tulsa. Half of my heart waits there for me. My shoes keep walking back to you, dear. Oklahoma's calling me.
With the aforementioned Jasmine McDonald singing harmony there, boy, you guys knocked it out of the park with that one.
That was amazing, and Lance Goodman did the video on that and did that in record time, and I was amazed. We've got such a talented crew. Lance is now kind of on retainer with us as far as video production, so we've got the full package here. What we're able to produce is just never ceases to amaze me, and we just kind of keep outdoing ourselves with every production. Another person I want to mention, I don't know if you've got a video teed up for her, but there's so many other people. I know it's hard to, can't get them all in, but Mackenzie McCartney, she and her brother Austin are performing in Wichita Falls this weekend at the Western Swing Festival. I don't remember the exact name of the festival, but they're certainly out there doing a lot of live stuff, and rightfully so. She just lights up the stage.
She's so much fun.
And her brother is up and coming stars. We kind of got that Randy Travis thing going on, and we had Eric Diamond in here who just recorded an album, and with Kurt they wrote and recorded, and he's going to be releasing that here fairly soon. Kathy Jewell is working on a lot of songs that she and Kurt wrote. She recorded one that came out with Lonnie Spiker, a duet that is called. Do you remember the name? I can't remember the name of the song, but anyway, but it's a great song. So there's so much going on here, and who was just Carrie Romero was just in here too, a new artist.
Yeah,
and
talented lady.
Y'all wrote, Kurt, you and Carrie wrote 11 songs, and in the process of getting that stuff out there. And this studio is probably the busiest studio in the United States, I would imagine.
A lot going on here, and we're going to keep everybody up to date on everything going on as we go week to week. And yeah, definitely a shout out to Mackenzie and Austin McKetty. We had Mackenzie's video on there for her latest single a few weeks ago. So if you missed it, go back and look through some of these back episodes here. It was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago we had that on there. And another great one. She's a great fiddle player as well as a vocalist.
She is. And, you know, we're working on a lot of live opportunities for live music with our artists, and we'll be updating everybody on that as that continues to materialize. And we also, and maybe I'm jumping the gun and stepping on you, Brent. I apologize if I am, but want to make sure that everybody tunes in to Kurt Ryle's Road Stories on Monday evening.
Right, next Monday evening. Yeah, we're going to get to that. Yeah, we'll circle back around to that here in a second. Not this coming Monday. We're going to do it every other Monday, beginning the following Monday. So a week from this coming Monday will be the next episode of Road Stories with Kurt Ryle, and there's a special page for that, which is the Kurt Ryle Road Stories Facebook page. Make sure you go and follow that. That's where that thing is going to appear, and you also be able to see it here on the Clarksville Creative Sound page as well. You know, so we had a great conversation about Kurt's time working with Vern Gosden here this past Monday night, and we're just going to keep building on that every other week here. That is at 7 p.m. Central Time is when those are going to run every other Monday. So make sure you stay tuned for those things here, and make sure you get plugged into this Fort Worth Musical Moments Facebook group, the Clarksville Creative Sound Facebook group, also the Rural Strong Media Facebook page, and check those pages often because we're constantly updating with new music from Clarksville Creative Sound. We're letting you know about some of the things going on in the Fort Worth music scene. And by all means, that's a participatory page here. If you've got anything going on in the Fort Worth musical moments, don't be trying to sell your concert tickets. We've had to boot some people out for doing some weird things like that. But boy, if you've got any musical memories of Fort Worth, or if you know something going on here in the traditional country or Western swing realm, feel free to share it here. That's what we're here for, to kind of share those experiences. So make sure you do that. Also, go check out Rural Strong Radio. Steve mentioned it earlier, our 24/7 streaming radio station, found at ruralstrongmedia.com and on the Live 365 streaming radio app. It's playing the best in traditional country music, Western swing, little bluegrass, little Southern rock, some inspirational music. And as we say every week, everything on there from Bob Wills to Steve Markwardt, and a lot going on there. So we would love for you to check that out. Again, ruralstrongmedia.com or the Live 365 streaming radio app. And we've got a couple great programs that come out of Texas every week on Sundays, beginning at 9 a.m. Central. From Vidor, Texas to the world, it's Robbie Lynn with Sunday's Kind of Country. And Robbie plays 3 hours of great inspirational country music from some legendary artists and independents as well. And a great way to fill your soul and get the week started. So I hope you will check those out. And then at noon Central, it's Billy Bowles Swinging Country. Our friend Billy Bowles, emanating out of KSSL FM in the Lubbock, Texas area. He plays 2 hours of great traditional country music and Western swing. One of the great proponents for all that music in the music business today. So make sure you check out Billy Bowles Swinging Country, and also the Sunday's Kind of Country with Robbie Lynn. Well, I tell you what, did I forget anything, Steve? It's been a fun hour. Well, I should say an hour and 25 minutes to this point. I
was looking at some of the comments, and Billy Bowles, our good friend, always helpful, was filling in the blanks for some of the information that I was trying to give out, was incomplete on, and that is Mackenzie and Austin are playing at the Western Swing Music Society of the Southwest Showcase That's in Wichita Falls this weekend. Eric Diamond's performing there as well, as is Chuck Cusimano. So we got a lot of friends playing there, and we'll have to catch that gig one of these days ourselves and maybe perform there. It's in Wichita Falls. And then he said Lonnie and Kathy's duet song is called That's All It Took. So we wanted to fill those blanks in. Thank you, Billy Bowles, for tuning in and helping us out with that information. Billy's a wealth of information.
I love it. We always have people to keep us honest on here.
That's right. And that's that's a tall order. So.
It really is. Hey, I wanted to mention something else. If you didn't get a chance to check it out earlier this week, I did a Real Strong Live with country music artist John Barry. And he has got some dates that are going to be coming to Texas. And as a matter of fact, one in Arlington, so not far down the road from Fort Worth here. If you get a chance in the next couple of weeks to check those out, he is going to be with our friends at the Cactus Theater in Lubbock on Wednesday, April 5th. Then the next day, April 6th, he heads to the Arlington Music Hall. And then to see our friends at Do-Si Do, the Big Barn in the Woodlands, Texas on Friday, April 7th. And if you missed any of that, go back to the Rural Strong Media Facebook page, and you can see my interview with him. They were trying to get the word out about those Texas dates here. So I'm happy to oblige and wish those guys the best of luck as they go down the road here and entertain some in Texas. I know they got a good following there.
Speaking of Do-Si Do, Mary Minder's got a good connection with Do-Si Do. I'll let her share that. We'll maybe do a special announcement with her at some point. I don't want to step on her toes on that, but CMA of Texas and Do-Si Do are developing a relationship that's going to be very impactful for all of us.
Yes, great stuff. Well, I tell you what, this has been a fascinating time here. And John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here for this. And man, we hope you'll come back. And I feel like just some of those individual topics we could do whole shows on. I was getting a little worried when we started going down the Beatles rabbit trail, because you could do show upon show just on some of that stuff.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Brent. Really love your shows.
Yeah, and Brent, I guess hopefully you're heading this way. Hopefully tomorrow. Don't try to come tonight. We're expecting some really
heavy rain,
pretty bad weather here tonight. But so we'll batten down the hatches and look for you tomorrow. But thanks, Brent, as usual.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have a fun day tomorrow. A lot going on here, and I'm excited to get to spend a little time with you guys. And just again, thank you everybody who's tuned in today and hanging with us all this time. We really appreciate it. And we hope you come back again next Friday, 10 a.m. Central. And we got a special guest next Friday.
Well, we're going to bring on Larry O'Neill, who is the chief in charge of the Fort Worth Memories page. And, you know, they've got over 125,000 members. So Larry's the one that asked me if I would do this music program. Of course, it was very attractive to me because of the reach that Fort Worth and the influence that Fort Worth Memories has. And he's got listeners and members from all over the world. And so Larry has been very kind to let us kind of piggyback onto his Fort Worth Memories thing. And Larry is a wealth of knowledge, especially all things Fort Worth, political, social, musical. In fact, this morning he was on talking about some blues stuff that went on in Fort Worth, you know, and Fort Worth has a very rich history of blues and rock and roll and country. And so we're going to have Larry on and just kind of touch base with him and see what's going on with Fort Worth Memories. We may even talk about that Ernest Tubbs statue project that we want to try to kick into high gear.
Yeah, baby. Let's get that thing done. Well, I tell you what, we'll let everybody get out of here for now. Don't forget, if you missed any part of this, it automatically archives at the spot where you're watching it. So make sure you go and check all that out. So for John Castleberry and for our friend Steve Markwardt, it's Brent Adams. We hope you come back again next week for Fort Worth Musical Moments. Until then, keep riding tall in the saddle. Make it a great week, everybody. You've been watching Fort Worth Musical Moments, a production of Rural Strong Media and Clarksville Creative Sound, copyright 2023. Please join the Fort Worth Musical Moments Facebook group and join us each Friday at 10 a.m. Central as we introduce you to another key figure in Fort Worth's musical heritage.